Hey guys, welcome to the Cultivated Life Podcast. We're so glad that you've joined us. Tonight's going to be a great night. I've got some amazing guys here with me, and I can't wait for you to hear their story. Now, let me encourage you, if you want to find out more about the Cultivated Life, you can go to thecultivatedlifeministries.com. The books are there. All the information about Sharon and I are there, what we do, why we do it. And right now is the perfect time to share. We want you to hit the share button to your Facebook page. They're already starting, people. It's going to get rowdy in here.
That's why I planted that seed.
Yeah, so also hit the like, and if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button because that's very important, and then leave us some comments. These guys are going to be, gauging their popularity by who gets the most comments. So don't feel any pressure out there, but I'm just saying. So I've got Dan and Gary Schell with a C. I did that last week.
S-C-H-E-L-L.
Yeah, exactly. And Luke was like, is it C-H-E-L-L? And I'm like, sorry, I said with a C, it's S-C-H-E-L-L. So anyway, Dan and Gary are brothers your whole life.
His whole life.
My whole life.
That's amazing.
Not his whole life, but my whole life for sure. Yeah, we're the youngest of six.
Yeah.
So there's 6 Shells out there as far as the original
Total kids.
Shell siblings. Yeah.
5 boys?
4 boys.
4 boys.
4 boys, 2 girls.
2 girls.
It went 2 boys, 2 girls, 2 boys, and we're the trailing on the end. I'm the baby of the bunch.
Ah.
So I'm the caboose.
Okay, so you're the spoiled one. We won't talk about that.
Yeah, and we didn't have much growing up, so my spoiled was different than what you think of spoiled. But I was favored. Very much like the coat of many colors. I was favored. I could see, but wasn't quite to the extreme that some get.
I get it. Yeah, it wasn't quite that crazy. Tell us kind of how you guys got to Life Chapel. I know you were coming, and then you found us first.
So yeah.
So talk about that.
Okay, so there's a whole backstory that we could eventually get into with this one, but I'll do the shortened version of that. My wife and I and my family, my 2 daughters, lived up in Michigan up until I'm going to get the dates all wrong, but a couple of years ago.
Yeah, there you go. That makes it easy.
And my wife had been really leaning and pressing into God a lot more than I. And I had grown up in the church, but I never really strayed away too far, but I never really rooted super deep.
You were kind of living on the edge.
And when we went to Michigan, we never really got real connected deep with the church. And so when we started connecting with one church, it kind of things didn't work out certain ways, so then we tried another church and kind of bounced around like that. Well, anyways, my wife has had a bout of illness and started leaning into God more. It kind of ushered that in, and same with me. She dug in a lot deeper. She was the one affected. So I was affected, but I was also now working overtime to try to make up for because she got to the point where she couldn't work at all.
Yeah.
And so I was, it was just trying to stay afloat.
And both of you are in the medical field.
And both of us are in the medical field, yeah. So when she got her moments of connecting with God, he had impressed on her heart that we needed to sell our house and move. And she's like, okay, God, where do you want us to go? He didn't really have an answer, but he kept nudging that. And that went on for multiple years. And it kind of, it was one of those things that was in the back of our minds the whole time. That kind of feels like what God wants us to do. We're not sure when. Yeah. But as it came closer to the time, we eventually succumbed to God's request because it was pressing pretty hard. And so we succumbed to God's request. We sold the house, not knowing where we were going to go. So it was a huge step of faith. Of the which it felt like there wasn't the other part of that step, which usually there's that first part, but he left us going.
You're
are you going to trust
faith and not by sight?
Man, and it was scary.
Yeah,
and the whole process between essentially finding here, and even when we found here, it takes that daily faith, it takes that daily getting into the Word and kind of getting reassured by him on the daily. So he kind of, I think he did this the way he did it on purpose so that we would lean in daily. Because without that, is the reason we were at where we were at. So I said all that to say we ended up at Life Chapel. So a friend of ours, Gerald Brzezinski, friend of the family, we've known him our whole lives, invited us to Life Chapel. He said, this is a great place, great people in the place, and I think you and your family especially will really like it here. And so we said, all right, we'll go. And he did that a couple times before I actually took the invite.
Yeah.
And then when I took the invite, we got here and we, came in somewhat trepidatiously just because of our experiences in those a couple churches that we had up in Michigan that we were like, I don't know. We kept him hawing around about it. But when we got to the church, it was one of those things where we're looking for the thing. We're looking for the thing that's going to make us go, no, we don't want to go here. So we're just looking for the thing. And, all right, well, this seems okay, and this seems okay, but well, let's give it some time. Let's give it some time because we're going to find the thing. And so, and God's still working on us on certain areas. So that's still a day-by-day thing. But we started coming here, and then had to been about the third or fourth service that we have party here, which it's a long stretch for us because we work every other weekend. So getting to church by itself is kind of a struggle, especially on a weekend off. You're finally wanting to go, I can relax. Oh, gotta get up early.
Yep.
So getting here, we got to a service that God directly spoke to us through you at the end of a service. And I can't remember if you spoke that morning or somebody else spoke, but I know you did the wrap up at the end because you said the thing that went right between our eyes, and we both went, we did this and this and looked at each other, and we're like, all right, I guess this is where we're supposed to be.
Wow.
And it was from that point that I just said, all right, I'm kind of putting my head down like the football player, and I'm busting through this. I'm pushing through to see what God's going to do, because he's called us here. He stapled in that this is where we're at. So now what's going to happen? And I was just doing church like I knew to do church.
Right.
And then what eventually happened with Dan and Josie coming to town for the summer, they started doing the traveling, not traveling, but snowbirding.
The reverse
reverse sunbird, yeah.
Sunbird.
So the snowbird. So they would be in Florida, but Dan missed being around family, and Josie really loves it too. So
because all her family was here.
too.
And by the way, if you missed the podcast with Dan and Josie, you got to go back and find that, because it was absolutely stellar, and they tell their whole story. So
hey, Luke's smart with the stuff. He can put it in the links. Put it in
he
the links. Put it on the
could do
comments.
something like that.
And you can link right to it.
We put a lot of faith in Luke for all this mess we make over here.
So it's during that time, Dan got a part-time job, and he was right over where our apartment was at the time. It was before we got a house. And it was at the apartment, and we were really close by to the Planet Fitness up in Spring Meadows area. And so we were both wanting to get back into shape because we were both let it go. And
We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah. And so we started linking up and just going to the gym, multiple times a week. So it was just during those times that we just had talks, and it wasn't always. It was a lot. Our talks are a lot of times not always, but often wrestling, and then technique, and I mean.
And then it was God.
And then it's God,
Wow.
lifting technique, and then God. So it's like, I mean, family stuff and all that too, but it would just constantly kind of pop up. And so then he would start asking questions about it. And okay, cool, this is cool. And we've been, I know when my daughter went down to Florida before, she said that she could tell Dan was hungry. And so we started praying at that time that God would feed that and
A few years ago.
Create a door opening. Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Correct.
Wow.
And so it was like this door was opening, and we're like, okay, well, they're here now. I'll do what I can do.
What about Josie when you came down? Because you knew that there was something with Josie. She just needed
Yes. So so you're going to have to go watch Dan and Josie podcast because it'll fill in all the blanks because God opened up a way through my work to be able to essentially take my whole job and put it up on a cork board, and then take it back from the cork board and let me come back to work when it was time to. And it was a blessing from God, because it really didn't happen that way. But I saw the need for the help that Rachel, which is Dan and Josie's daughter down in Florida, needed during her time. She just had a baby, and mother-in-law's sick leave had been depleted, all their vacation time. Same with Josie's, and they're getting at their wits' end, and they're still needed to get from here to here. And I was like, you know what? I feel like God's pressing me to do this. And I thought I was going down specifically to minister to them, which I probably was. But the bigger takeaway that I got from it in hindsight was the time that I got to have individually with Josie and got to pour into her.
So you thought you were going to support their daughter that was dealing with cancer, the new baby and all that. But God was like, we got a whole nother plan going on.
Right.
I love that.
And so,
Wow.
and it was because Dan was at work at the time. So I had like certain parts of the day where I'd come home and it would be just me and Josie for a few hours. And we would just talk. And Josie's super personable. So we're just talking. And I try to be as real as possible. And that's what one of the things we found here in Light Chapel is that it's full of real people. We all have real problems.
We're bad things.
And it's not even just that it's real, it's that you pair up and side with the real. Like I get it, it's not, oh, you didn't do this or didn't do this, or this is what, it's, hey, let me do it with you. This is how you do it. This is how I've figured out how to do it,
So that's how you connected, and then he gets up here. So you're praying.
Yeah, so we've been praying
Because Josie, you're seeing a hunger in Josie, you see a hunger in Dan. Then they are up here, you move here. So you guys are coming, you're coming from Michigan. So I'm gonna poke you
back in Ohio now.
They're coming from Florida, and you guys are.
It's the Michigan Shells and the Florida Shells coming here.
Correct. We came
And you guys moved back here within a few miles of each other.
Correct.
And now you're working out at the gym.
Yep.
And you start talking to Dan.
Yeah. And I was, eventually we were going to invite them to the church.
Yeah.
I didn't want to press that too much. He kind of said, we want to go to your church. So I was like, well, let's take that off the table so that I don't have to be like bugging him about it or feel like I'm, bothering somebody or like Trey said, you don't shove your light, you shine it.
Oh,
so I didn't want to overstep my bounds with anything and push them away.
Yeah.
But they were like, we want to come check it out. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And so, like, we were every other week. So we were looking at the calendar going, okay,
and Josie and I went to Colorado, and we're like, as soon as we get back from Colorado, we'll go to the church with you. And then Gary wrote it on the calendar, which he didn't tell me he wrote it on the calendar. But after one of our workouts, he's like, hey, you want a protein shake? And I was like, yeah, I want a protein shake. Come on over. I'll make you a protein shake. So I'm drinking that protein shake, and my sister Brenda makes these awesome calendars for the whole family for Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
So it's got all our pictures on there and all our birth dates and everything. And on that calendar, you can't help but look at it. And on the calendar, it says right there on that Sunday, Dan and Josie come to church with us. So then I was like, we have to go now. I have to go.
I love that.
Right?
And now it sounds like super like, oh, we were super focused on it, which we were to some degree. Because we wanted to be aware of it, one, so make sure we'd show up. Because we were still in the midst of trying to be, studious about showing up. And then also with that on the calendar, we were able to go, all right, we're going to pray towards this. So that God opens the door.
That's a powerful point right there.
And
is targeting your prayer.
Man. Not just targeting it. My wife actually went into, and it shows up in that podcast, spiritual warfare. Because I was going to have her teach me a Bible study, which I didn't ask her to do that yet. So if you're watching right now, you're going to teach me this pretty soon. The ins and outs of spiritual warfare and how to bind and bound certain things that will help individuals to not have to deal with in the moment of. And that's kind of where Josie's story come in, where she's feeling nauseous and she's like, I didn't know the spiritual warfare. And I'm going, that was Crystal's prayers. That was Crystal's prayers. We were praying, but hers was direct and specific, and it made such a difference. And now I'm like, after watching that podcast, I'm like, this is awesome, and it's something I really got to delve into. So she's gonna. Well,
and then they came, and the rest is history.
Yes.
They won't quit coming.
Right.
Something I wanted to say last time on the last podcast that I didn't say, and I got to say it, is you asked about the baptism, and now I had to go back to my mind frame at that time, before I got baptized. And at that time, I was going through my cancer stuff. And at that time, I knew the cancer, it was 95% chance I was going to beat it. But man, I can get that 5%, that was in my mind. And I've seen a lot of movies and TV shows where bad things happen on operating tables, so that was my mindset coming into this I'm at the end of my life. I gotta get prepared. So I was preparing for the end of my life,
Wow.
only to come out of that water and realize it's just beginning.
Oh,
That was the
man.
moment.
Just beginning.
That was the end of
Just
that life.
beginning.
It was
That
so
life
cool.
was over.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah. So
Oh, man.
Sorry.
Brothers. Oh, no, separate you, boy. Go straighten up over there. We'll separate you. I should have sat in the middle.
well, that would have been you. I'll take that job for you.
Wow.
No, that was
So-
really good.
Before, let's go to BC, before Christ.
Yeah.
Even though you were
Right.
committed at some level, but
I-
not that deep
Right.
level, you acknowledge
Yeah.
that. You guys were both into wrestling. Or as they say in Kentucky, wrestling.
Wrestling. Yeah. Yep. No G at the end, just a apostrophe.
Exactly.
Wrestling.
So, how did you get there? What was that world like?
Man, should I take this one?
Well,
Well, y'all gonna have to interrupt each other on this one.
I'll let you get the how you got there because I'm going to do the preface because we grew up watching wrestling.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
it was the two boys, two girls, two boys. The four boys were always watching wrestling.
We just wanted to wrestle. Like, the living room became the wrestling ring.
That's been the dream from when we were as early as we can remember wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The larger than life characters of the
I wanted
1980s.
to get in the ring. I wanted to feel the ropes.
Yes.
It's one of the.
We had all the toys. We had all the stuff. That's all we wanted to do. I remember I had appendicitis when I was about 7, 8 years old, and I remember them gassing me. They're putting me on the thing. I was laying down, and they had me look at the ceiling and start counting. They're like, "Well, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like, "Well," and they started rattling off things that I could be, and I'm like, "No, no, no." And they're like, "Well, what do you want to be?" And I was like, I want to be a professional wrestler. And then they go, "Oh!" And then I went out. And that's the last thing I remember.
Wow.
And so from the earliest memory I have, and that was our goal, that we were going to be professional wrestlers.
Yep.
And then the reality of it came to be when...
Well, throughout high school, in junior high and high school, to say, I want to be a pro wrestler. As you're getting older, it gets a little bit more... Start pointing and laughing.
Yeah, like,
But man, it was still the dream, So I ended up wrestling in high school and barely being like I didn't do anything in high school. I was the guy who got beat up all the time. In fact, a real quick side note: Josie was looking through a high school yearbook because we're back up in Ohio, and it was my freshman year. Now, my freshman year, I could beat 2 guys in the wrestling practice, and then they both quit.
Thanks.
So every single my freshman year, when I saw that picture, I was like, "Whoa, Josie, look at this!" And she was like, "What a bunch of nerds!" And I was like, "Man, this picture gives me chills, because I got beat up every single day. I was the beat up guy, which I think that was programming me for pro wrestling,
Yeah.
And so I just always wanted to go be a wrestler. And then when I was 19 years old, a thing came across the TV for a wrestling show, and it was up in Taylor, Michigan. So I look at the map, this is before GPS.
Yeah,
so
of
look
course.
at the map, and Taylor, Michigan's not that far.
Yeah.
And we go up there, and then I ended up talking to a referee during intermission. I was like, I have to do this. It's not even a want anymore. I have to do it.
Like
And
the passion burned pretty strong that whole time frame.
And he goes, well, there's the closest school is in Ohio, which blew my mind because I knew of everything, but I didn't know that there's a school in Ohio, and it was Body Slammers Wrestling Gym in Lima, Ohio. So then I go home, and where's Lima, Ohio? It's only an hour and 15 minutes south. And then,
That's so close.
And then my brother,
it's attainable.
My brother Doug with the 2 beards, he's 10 years older than us. He gets on the phone, calls 411.
And you're how old at this time?
So I would be 19, so Doug would be 29 at this.
And I'm 4 years younger, so I was 15
But actually,
when they're doing.
okay.
So I couldn't do what they're doing.
yeah.
I'm like, I want to so bad, and I couldn't.
Actually, I was 18 when we made the call.
Yeah.
We started training when I was 19, so Doug would have been 29.
Right.
And so we got in at 1996 and started training to be a professional wrestler.
Yeah.
And we'd go home every single night and practice everything.
Every time they'd come home because they'd drive
Wow.
back and forth from Lima because they're
So
both
you were
working.
getting in on the lessons.
I was getting the
after.
lessons,
You
yes.
were
I was getting the
after lessons.
second-hand
Second-hand
lessons,
lesson, yeah.
which at first I was able to maintain and keep up with. And
Yeah.
then once they start, flopping around in the ring a little bit, then I started getting lost. And then they started learning how to put it all together and make it work for professional wrestling.
Yeah.
And by then they had surpassed where I was at, and I was just watching and trying to learn, and they learned all the lingo, so they'd come home and use the lingo and not tell me what it was.
Oh my goodness.
Because it's a secret, and back in the days, it was a big time
It was a
secret.
big
Yeah.
secret.
So your one older brother
Yep.
and yourself were the ones who started in the
Yes.
wrestling.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And then so I trained at 19, had my first match at 20, and then it kind of just
Took off.
took off for us. Like every single weekend, we're trying to fill up every single date, much like a band would try to do. You know, you just try
Yeah.
to fill up.
So there was no online stuff.
No online.
No.
It's all-
So you find out where it's at and you call and say, "Hey, can I get in on it?" Or
a lot of it was we're at this show, and off this show we get 3 other people saying, "Hey, I got a show, and you're putting down your dates. Okay, I can hit all
Wow.
3
It's all
of those."
networking.
And all networking. And then you go to those 3 shows, and then you get a few shows off of that.
And
it
back
just-
then, it was a very closed business.
Yeah.
Like you had to break to get in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it was just starting to get to the point where eventually it get the social media and everything. It made it a lot easier to contact people, and then it just blew up, and everybody
So
was able to
when
get in.
you guys started, mid '90s,
Yeah.
who were the big wrestlers? Was it WWE then? Because
It
it
was-
changed
It was
over.
still
back
WWF
then.
at that time.
WWF.
So the big stars
Okay.
at that time would have been like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels.
Correct.
On one TV station, but then you had WCW, which would have been Hulk Hogan
Yeah.
and
Ric
Ric
Flair.
Flair and Sting on the other channel.
Okay.
So, in essence, that was
were-
our competition.
that-
you know, like
Right, that's who we had to try to rise up
Yeah,
to
we
be
had to
like.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah.
the
They were the
biggest-
top. They were
Yeah.
top of the
and,
ladder.
and man, they were so seasoned because they grew up in a very closed era.
Yeah.
And in the very
Probably
closed era,
80s.
Yes.
into
70s and the
90s,
80s,
70s, 80s, and
Yeah.
that's where
Wow.
they had territories, and the guys would learn how to do this job in
They
one
would learn for
territory,
about 10
and then they'd
13 years
Yeah.
before they'd get the TV, you know.
and then go to
Wow.
different territories and learn how to do all this stuff.
So
So
by
by
the
the
time
time
they
they
got
got
to
to TV, they had so many what we call tools in the toolbox
Yeah.
of how to get the crowd to respond to you,
Yeah.
how to what they call in wrestling work a crowd,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
to work the audience.
Yeah.
And essentially get them in the palm of your hand, and you know exactly the little buttons you got to push to get the reactions you're shooting for. So if you're looking for the cheers, you get the cheers. You're looking for the boos,
Which is the whole Hulk Hogan ripping the shirt.
Correct.
That was
Yeah.
kind of his
Yeah.
signature. That when he really wanted to take him over the top,
Yep.
he
Yeah.
would no doubt say a lot of other things to
Sure,
get to
yes.
that point. But
Yeah.
at some point, he'd be
Yes.
ripping his shirt off.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And then Hulk Hogan was so special because let's just say Macho Man, or so whoever the bad guy was, they would hit them with their finishing maneuver. Macho Man was a big elbow, and then he'd cover him, hook the leg and everything, and the crowd would be 1, 2, and Hulk Hogan kicks out. And then he just starts hulking up.
Yeah, he starts to Hulk up. Yeah.
And that means the crowd.
The
just
crowd goes right with him.
right
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
him, yeah. And then
Wow.
all the way to the big.
So
punch.
that was the guys you guys were watching.
Yes.
Correct.
And then now you're in it.
Yes, with some of these guys, most of these guys.
So that's where it got really surreal
Yeah.
at moments,
Yeah.
because we would get on shows. So I didn't get into the actual wrestling part of it. Now, I guess I did once. My debut match was in 1996. I was 16 years old, and they snuck me onto a show down in Columbus, near Columbus. I don't remember what the name of the town was, but it was at an ox roast
It
down
was
near Columbus.
a really low.
A really low level.
Yeah,
It was, not even like AAA minor league low. It was lower than that. It's-
Yeah.
But they were able to get me on, and the guys all took care of me well in there. And there was a battle royal, and they let me win the battle royal, which is
Oh
like
my
where you
goodness.
dumping people out of the ring.
Yeah.
So at 16 years old, I had the most awesome, in my
Experience.
eyes,
Yeah.
wrestling debut
Of
that
course,
could
man.
ever exist. And so from the time that happened till the time I wrestled again was 4 or 5 years, because
Okay.
I kind of lost interest, and I was doing my own little thing while they were still pressing forward and getting on shows and getting booked everywhere else. I was still 16, so it wasn't going to happen for me anyways, but
Right.
that was a fun debut. But then I started back up again in around 20. Is
Okay.
when I peaked in interest in it, because I was like, you know what, I think I could do this. I was physical enough.
Now, were you going to watch all them, or they just
Always.
coming home and tell? Okay,
No, I would follow. I mean, not always, but
Yeah.
as
But a lot.
often as I could,
Yeah.
I'd be on the road with them and listening to them discuss all the stuff, and just
Yeah.
trying to pick up as much knowledge about it as I could, and then just watching.
So
and
now,
there.
did you guys have a territory, or by that time was
By
the
that
territory
time,
kind of opening up?
actually, the territories back then, there was territories, and then they started to explode, like breaking all up.
Yeah.
When WWF became a big thing, he swiped all the main guys from all the big territories.
Oh,
So
okay.
then they kind of fizzled out. So then it was
Gotcha.
just random
Independent.
shots here.
It
and they
became like
called
a national,
Right.
rather than a regional.
Yeah.
Correct. And
Type
so,
thing. Gotcha.
And then they kind of went down, and then it became independent wrestling.
yeah, it was just all independent. There's no territory.
territory.
There's areas, but
Yeah.
there is no specific territories. Because when they have territories, they have television, and they could control who's coming in, who's going
Yeah,
out.
they would network. So when
Gotcha.
one guy's, they can only peak for so long, then they gotta send him over there. This is all before TV, so it's
Right, where used to, you were regional TV.
Yes.
Once everything started going cable,
Yep.
Yep.
you could pick up stuff from another region and
Correct.
see your guy
Yep.
fighting over there.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I see how this is working.
Right. And so then
Makes
around
sense.
2021, I started having my older brother, Doug, train me. And this is where Dan was out doing tours. He's doing tours in Canada and with a couple different guys that he met along the way. Dan was the more athletic. So Dan and Doug, when they first started training, Doug had there's certain qualities that make a great pro wrestler.
Mhm.
There's you got to have that character that connects with the audience.
Mhm.
You got to have enough athleticism and a physique that can handle the beating that it
Yeah.
takes.
Take a beating.
You got to be able to talk or communicate one way or form or another to the audience so that they have that reaction time. And Dan was really good with everything athletic and the understanding of how to put that match together to get the crowd to react the way you wanted. Doug had the character. He wasn't as physically capable of all the other stuff, but his character made it so that stuff wasn't even, it minimized that stuff.
Yeah.
His character is Mr. Main Event. If you ever want to be entertained thoroughly, YouTube
Okay.
Mr. Main Event.
So, Mr. Main Event, your brother,
Yes.
Doug.
This is our brother Doug. Yep.
and then what was your stage name?
My stage name was Elvis Elliott, and then I had a few changes along the way. And that name came up just because we would read the wrestling magazines, and before you get your picture in the, this is how deep I thought. Like before you get your picture in the magazine, you get your name in the magazine. So I wanted my name to be Elvis Elliott. Elvis will stick out. I didn't know what Elliott.
Yeah.
Elvis is what was the first name, and Elliott I think just rolled off. So that was what I chose. That's how I chose it.
And my name was Awesome Gary Dawson, and we chose that when I was 16 and gonna be making my debut. And I didn't
Gary Dawson.
I didn't care about a wrestling name. I just wanted to wrestle.
Yeah.
And they're like, "But you got to have a name." I'm like, "Well, I don't know what I want my name to be." And as the 1996 Olympics had just happened, the Summer Olympics,
Yeah.
and Dominique Dawes was one of the gymnasts that was flipping around, and they called her Awesome Dawes. And then Doug was like, "Well, there's Awesome Awesome Richard Dawson from Family Feud." He goes, "Just be Awesome Gary Dawson." And I'm like, "That's stupid." I was like, "But I'll use it unless I come up with something better," because I didn't care about it.
The made-up name was, just in case I'm not good at this, I don't want to embarrass my family.
Yeah. That is twofold. You can either market it and you can make that your name and then still be incognito in your neighborhood because they can't look you up in the yellow pages.
Right.
Or you can be like, "I'm going to this area or it's this territory and this is my name. And then when I get good, I'm going to go to this territory, use this name because then nobody remembers how
Also,
terrible I
you
was."
could be different personas.
And many
sure.
times in this area, like in Ohio, I was a good guy, and I was a good guy. Like the crowd really liked
Okay.
me. But then right up in Detroit, I'd be the bad guy. You know. Like,
Oh my
only
goodness! So
two
you
other
had to
ways.
change personas,
Yeah.
the way you interacted with the crowd,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It was fun.
So now, help me out, because if I remember right, there was some big story about Hulk Hogan was a good guy, went bad,
Yeah.
like publicly.
Yeah,
like,
it was
I
a
mean,
very
like,
big
it wasn't the
moment.
regional thing. It
Right.
was a huge.
Yeah.
And then did he ever come back good again?
Eventually, yes.
Yeah.
Eventually.
So, but that was a huge moment. We actually,
yeah,
the world of
because-
wrestling just had another one of those moments
One of those.
because I don't know if you ever heard of the guy named John Cena.
No.
Okay, so he's like the
He's
Hulk
like the Hulk
Hogan
Hogan
of
of
the
the
last
era.
15 years.
Okay. Okay.
And he just did the same thing. He just turned to a bad guy.
but he's been good.
But he's been good for years and years and
He
years.
goes
And
into being the bad
and
guy.
now he's going into being the bad guy. And it was a huge shift because everybody that watched when they were younger saw him a certain way all the way that time. And now all those that are older now and the little kids are watching him see the guy that he knows now, and then he makes that shift, and now all of a sudden you get the old audience that wants to kind of pay attention again, and then the new audience is like, "This is different and new." Now you get a little bit more of a dynamic, and it's a good. What is done well and done right, you get more audience.
Let's do a timeout. Ladies, I am so sorry.
Yes.
You need to tell your husband right now, you got to watch this. Because the ladies are like, they're scrolling Facebook. They're like,
Sure.
yeah, no,
Sorry,
we ain't
sorry.
getting in on this.
Yeah.
We're going to get to some good stuff
Yeah.
that you'll enjoy in just a minute. But so, how long did you wrestle? Did you hear me say that?
Wrestling, yes. How
I
long did I
wasn't even
wrestle?
trying to say wrestle, and I said wrestle.
So the time frame where I did a lot of my wrestling was from the age of 21 to 26,
Okay.
25, 26. I ended up getting an injury that kind of put me out after that, and that's when I actually God intervened and blessed me with my wife, a new career, and a whole move that kind of shifted a whole bunch of stuff. And then eventually I came back around to get myself in good physical shape again, and then went, you know what? I see the people that I was on the road with back in the day. They're in front of the big screen now.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I went, maybe I could do this. And I got my body back into the shape that I was like,
Yeah.
if I put a good couple of years towards it, maybe I could do this and make the money that they're making off of it.
Yeah.
And so that was my second round. It started about 2016, 2015, somewhere
Okay.
in there.
Wow.
Trying to do it again.
Yeah.
And each time I was blessed, and I'm looking back and I know that God let me see it. So he blessed me with an opportunity through some of the guys to be called to the WWE, so the WWF, so the biggest company for wrestling there is out there in the world, called and said, we want you to come do this extra talent thing. And that's their way of kind of scoping out extra talent, use them for whatever they need, prop guys or whatever they need us to do. And we're all there hoping it's going to be, get in the ring and wrestle. That's the biggest thing. And then get a contract and you make that money. So I got an opportunity in my first run to do that, and I got to be a druid for the Undertaker. Basically a big hooded guy, so I can only say I'm the fourth guy to the right of the casket, but that's me right there.
Yeah. So you worked with the Undertaker.
So I worked with the Undertaker.
I've heard of that
essentially.
name.
Yes. So there's so then in the second run, I got a couple times where they called me up, and I got to do stuff for them.
And then,
more
so
recently as
what was your years of?
I'd say 96. That's pretty much go until Nathan got his brain tumors. Like right before that, and like when that happened, it was like there's not a lot of money when you're not a big star, you know. And you're almost paying to get to those shows, if that. And
Which happens in, I mean, minor league ball players. They're not
Yes.
making a boatload of money. They're
Yeah.
making 25, 30,000 a year, maybe.
Yeah, right.
Golfers. These guys are out there basically paying their own way to play a tournament.
Yeah.
Trying to get to the PGA.
Yeah.
Every sport kind of has that.
moment, and then
Yeah.
if you can make it right past that crux, then
Yep.
flip over, and then you start making that money.
Exactly.
It's
So
kind of
wrestling
balance.
is the same thing.
Yeah, and maybe I could have pushed a little hard. Like looking back, I'm like, oh, if I would have done this here or that there, maybe that would have got.
So the 2020
Yeah,
hindsight.
second guessing,
Yes,
man. I'll tell you, that's a beast. It'll bite you all the way down the road, man. You're just like, oh, what if?
Yeah, what if?
But I've always wondered, because I remember thinking of this at 96 when I really loved pro wrestling, and I went to a church school, so I was always around church, and that was also around the same time frame that I had given my life over to the Lord, and like had a whole experience that nothing can ever take away from me. And I was at that same time that I would be like, all right, God, I would give you pro wrestling if that's what you want. And I had this passion that didn't seem to ever want to go away.
Yeah.
And now 2020 hindsight, if we're hindsight and stuff, 2020 hindsight, I can look back, and the passion that we have for pro wrestling, I believe it's God's way of being able to communicate to us a lot of the principles.
Yeah, like we have so many things that like coincide. With
Some things that only probably him, I, and my brother could kind of get the light bulb.
And other pro wrestlers that will definitely be watching this.
Right.
There's going to be pro wrestlers that we know that'll be watching this.
Yeah.
And they would understand what we're saying.
Right.
So Gary and I could actually go talk to some of these pro wrestlers.
Yeah.
And get through to them using pro wrestling.
Use their language.
Using their language.
Because of the spiritual warfare aspect.
For sure.
Because of the discipleship or the discipline aspect.
Yes.
Because of all of these elements that align.
There's so many of them.
Yeah.
So many.
Wow, that's interesting.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's just because I know that world, and then I know this world, and I'm watching them in the templates that go over both of them.
One other thing I want to say for anyone out there that knows us, is in the wrestling world, I'm super new at this, so I'm still learning right now. So you
At
can
the
come-
Christian stuff.
At the Christian stuff. Yes, sorry, yes.
Yeah.
I'm still really new, and I'm learning so much so fast that if you come join me now,
We could go together.
You're right.
Go together.
Yeah,
You'll be
it really,
right
you and
with
your
me.
brother in
Yeah.
1996.
Exactly.
Going to Lima,
Exactly.
was that 96? Yeah, going to
96,
Lima
yeah.
together.
Yes.
It's like, hey, let's go learn this together.
Yes.
And you coming home and teaching Gary. and-
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
But it's all flipped.
Now
Gary's
it's
not teaching me.
much
you know?
much like many
You're teaching me.
many ways of the Bible and the way the enemy contorted things.
Yes.
Everything's inverted this direction.
Wow.
Because now I'm the seasoned vet that's teaching
Yes.
these young guys
Yeah.
the kind of the
spiritually
ropes.
and discipleship. and all
Literally
that,
the
yeah.
ropes.
Yeah. So you guys came to Life Chapel because at Planet Fitness, you talked about it.
Yeah.
You went to his house, saw it on the calendar,
Yes.
felt committed.
Yes.
Yeah.
You've been coming ever since. You got
Ever since,
baptized. You and
yes.
Josie got
Yes, and
baptized.
Nathan, yes.
And they-
Then you
Yeah.
moved from Florida because you were
Yeah.
living in Florida because
Yes.
that was conducive to wrestling.
Yes, originally, yep.
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 And then you moved back.
Yes.
And so you guys jumped in a group that I had called the Titus 10.
Yes.
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 Now you have your own group.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell me about
Yes,
that.
you-
How's that going?
Well, that was it's going really
This
well.
is called discipleship, though. This is
Yes.
how it works, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is you sat in a group. Had you been in a group before like that?
I've been in a group. I've been in a couple of
I have.
Carlos
Okay.
groups on a
Oh,
Saturday
yeah,
morning.
with Carlos. Yeah, yeah.
That was my first one ever.
That's your first
Yeah.
group. So then, and you learn a little bit
So
sitting in the
much.
group.
Yeah.
But then when you start to lead one,
Yeah.
this is how discipleship
That was
works.
so different.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
So
when
tell me
you
how your groups go.
well, you did the Titus 10 with us originally,
Yes.
and we had about 10 to 12, maybe even more
Yeah.
guys in that group. And you had set it up where each week you did the very first one, and at the end of that you said, "That's the last one I'm doing,"
Yep.
because you guys are each going to do another one,
Yes.
and you're like, and every week they were like somebody would volunteer and be like, all right, you volunteered, so I didn't get appointed. So each week it would come around, and it got towards those last probably 4 weeks or so, and me and Dan are both like, there's no other guys around.
no one here.
One of us are gonna have to do it. And so eventually, I think Dan volunteered before I did.
I took the first one, and
Yeah.
now I took it with such seriousness. Like, man, this is the first opportunity. I'm doing something for. This is for God,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I got to make this thing good.
This
So,
is-
man, I would highlight and then underline words and say, how does this? Like, I went deep. you
Yeah,
know, for that
yeah.
for that one chapter.
And you did amazing.
Yes.
I
You,
felt,
for
I
your
felt like I
first
brought
time,
it. You know?
I mean, not just your first time,
Yeah.
for any time, you did amazing.
Yeah.
You pulled out all the good stuff
Yeah.
because you can't just read it word for word.
Yes.
Right.
So you pulled out all the good stuff
Yeah.
and then
And then I didn't mind.
Yeah.
And then we're like, "Whew, that's done and over with." And we're like, all right. So we got this group wrapped up. It was such a great time, guys. We learned so much from that
Bond with
group.
all them guys.
yeah,
too, you
yeah.
know, like,
This is
so
why
many-
small groups are so important to discipleship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you sit in a room and guys or gals, depending on, sometimes it's couples,
Okay.
depending, but you're able to really open up your heart
Yeah.
and you're able to share and
Yeah.
it's safe.
Yeah.
And there's no judgment here.
Yeah.
And that's how discipleship is meant to work.
Yeah.
When you think about how Jesus discipled his people and the pressure that they could have felt after on any given day to be like, blew it, I ain't going tomorrow. I ain't following Jesus no more. I blew it. And Jesus gets up the next day and says, all right, let's go.
Right.
And it's like, that's how discipleship is meant to work.
Right.
Is you look at your situations, your mistakes, or what you could have done, should have done, maybe didn't do, or did and shouldn't have done, whatever. And you're saying, man, I blew it. But in a group, you realize I'm not the only one.
Not the only one.
Yeah.
We're okay. We're going to do
Right.
this together. We're on this journey together.
Yeah.
So that feeling of done with that happened, and then at the end of the group, you said, "Now I want you guys all to get your own guys together to do your own Titus 10." We're like, "Oh, okay, yeah." And then a couple weeks later, and you're like, "Hey, I want you and you to do a podcast, or not a podcast, to do a
group.
Your group." It's like, think about it for the spring. And we're like, "All right, spring." I'm looking
do
at
it.
Yeah, we'll
We'll
no
do
problem doing it in the spring.
And with that being said, anything that is God oriented, it's yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, Lord. Like even this podcast, my flesh is saying, you're too heavy. You're heavier you've ever been.
2 years ago, that would not have crossed your mind
Yeah.
to say yes to
no
God
way.
to do any of this
And now
stuff.
it's yes,
Yes.
Lord,
And
yes. Lord.
everything is now yes.
Yes.
Even if it makes me uncomfortable, yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
much so. And then okay, springtime's coming around, and you're like, all right, it starts in 2 weeks. You guys got your guys?
Wait,
we're like,
we're still in winter.
yeah.
we're
I was
Oh,
like,
I
this
come
is
with a spring
January.
group because I refuse to acknowledge winter.
That's what they told. That's what Mindy and Jonathan told us, and we're like, oh, all right. Well, I guess we're gonna do this then. We tried to figure out the time frames, and I was like, yeah, it's about 2 weeks from now. Let's go.
Let's go.
Which is probably better because then my mind didn't do too much about it. And
Yeah.
we had no choice but to just go.
Yep.
And man, God meets us there every time, and it's
So
like
you chose your 5
we
guys,
chose 5,
and
give or take.
you don't have
Here's
5 guys anymore.
no. It grows every single time.
It's so funny because as far as Titus 10 goes, we got 10 spots pretty much filled up every single time.
Every time.
And sometimes a guy calls, says, I can't make it. And they're like, okay. And then all of a sudden, 3 other guys pop up.
Maybe some from the last class. Right?
Some from the last class come in.
Wow.
Different people that
Dan
has the
Elliott.
day off of work can come, like
Yeah.
one of my nephews.
Banger.
And yeah, so
That's
God's
so
supplying
cool.
our guys, and He literally meets us there every time. And every time that we and Him have taught it, so we were gonna push for. I opened the door for anybody else that wants to teach any of these to please do. I mean, Dan will bounce back and forth until somebody jumps in.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to pressure anybody to do it. 'Cause a
Like
lot of
I
them-
did.
Yeah,
You
like you
know,
did.
don't be like
Yeah,
Pastor.
yeah. Well,
He put the squeeze on us.
your ways are above my ways at this point as far as
man.
deciphering that. But man, I'm seeing guys in my group that could easily lead their own group.
Yeah.
Very sharp guys, and very guys connected to God.
Yeah.
And you can just see God talking through them when they talk. And then they're like, "Oh, that was so cool," because it wasn't really me.
Yeah.
And I've heard you describe before when God talks through you that you're like halfway through want to grab a notepad and paper.
Yeah, like,
write
I better
stuff
write that down because I never thought of that before.
and I totally can
Yeah.
correlate and understand that because when God moves through you, it's hard to describe, but I've been at the WWE and I've stepped out of the curtains and seen the crowds that oohs and ahs, and
Yeah.
you look around and that's pretty awesome, but it doesn't compare. It
Yeah.
doesn't compare to the feeling of God
Man.
using you.
Oh.
And I totally now I've never been a guy that would like ever preach. And if I was, I always thought I'm not going to be the guy that just screams up there.
Yes,
Well, I was
thank you.
just screaming. But I get it now.
Yeah.
Because when he starts talking through you, it's
Mm-hmm.
really hard to hold that excitement back. And you really get into it. So
Maybe we should do a whole like wrestling on the stage. One's the devil and one's the Lord. And, no, maybe. I don't want to figure out who's the devil and who's the Lord.
he's going to say yes to anything. So now's the time to get him to do it.
Don't. So tell me, as we wrap this up, if you could say this is the one thing that's made a difference in my discipleship in the last 2 years, what would be that one thing that you could look at and say, that was my game changer?
Every day I'm reading the Bible.
Every day.
Every day I'm in Proverbs. Today's the 10th.
Yep.
It'll be different on the podcast.
Yeah,
but today's
that's
the
all right.
10th, so today was Proverbs 10.
Yeah.
So I'm hitting that all the time, and then talking to people, and now like sending messages to groups of guys, and text messages, and they're sending me text messages, and it's all Bible based.
Ooh.
I got a whole new family of friends, and they just are filling me,
Yeah.
like they're filling me
Wow.
with knowledge, Bible verses and everything. I got Daniel, who's coming to our Titus 10. He lives out in Sylvania, goes to
Okay.
a church out there, and like every day we're sending each other
Yeah.
verses, so
Wow.
that like
That's awesome.
consistency.
So
and
the
being-
Word of God.
the Word of God
That's been the one thing. Just disciplining yourself.
discipline. Yes,
Just like going to the gym,
yes.
you're reading the Bible.
Yeah.
That's your going to the gym
Yes.
spiritually.
Yes.
I love that.
That was
What would be yours?
That was going to be the word I was going to use.
Really?
Is the discipline.
Yeah.
See, now when I was in my height of my second little run of wrestling, I got myself very disciplined when it came to eating and exercising, and I dove into the rabbit hole of all of things fitness.
Yeah.
And when I developed all those disciplines, I realized that I can be disciplined.
Yes.
And then that it wasn't just in that one area that I could be disciplined, because once I realized I got that in order, I could then create time to create
if
spots
you
for
can be
God.
disciplined in one area, you
Correct.
can be disciplined in any area.
Correct.
So for people that are disciplined with their job,
Yes.
they can be disciplined
Right,
spiritually.
Yes.
People that are disciplined in athletics, they can be disciplined with their job.
Yes.
Discipline is discipline. You just have to translate it into what.
Yes.
That was.
So, and that's exactly
Wow.
what opened up
Ooh,
my
I like
eyes
that.
to. It opened up my eyes to I'm capable of disciplining. And then
Mm-hmm.
it was one of the conversations I had with Dan and Schell here.
Yeah.
He said, the root word of disciple is discipline. And another light bulb went off. And I went, how did I go my entire life in church and not even connect the two?
Yeah.
And I kind of did at some point in time before, but not like I did just then.
Right.
Because then I was
revelation
like,
came at that
yes.
point. Yeah.
But then I was like, you know what? I know how to be disciplined. It takes precision. It takes commitment. It takes forethought. It takes.
Yeah.
It takes. And the hardest part for me was it takes pushing past what the flesh wanted to do or what my body's wanting to do versus
Because your flesh don't always want to go to the
know I
gym
need
every
to
day.
do.
You go to
Yes.
the gym, right? I'm tired. I'll hurt from
Yeah.
my muscles are hurting from yesterday, but you make yourself do that.
Right.
Spiritually,
Yeah.
same thing.
And if you allow the if you make it
Yeah.
negotiable,
Oh man.
if you make it negotiable,
Yeah.
it's already in a bad way. Your discipline's going to the wayside if you're negotiating. Yeah, do I feel like it today? It's got to be like brushing your teeth. Do you make brushing your teeth negotiable? I mean, you just do it. You just do
Yeah.
it. And that's how the mindset that I had in disciplining myself was, is just I don't even
Yeah.
I don't even give myself a negotiating opportunity as much as I can.
Well, the cultivated life, Sharon and I have a burden for discipleship.
Yeah.
That's why we teach Bible studies. That's why we push small groups. That's why we do this podcast. That's why we write books. That's why we do all of meet with people one-on-one, right? Is because we want to help people develop in their spiritual life into a place where they become strong. But it only comes through discipleship, which is discipline, and pushing through the hard stuff.
Yeah.
Man, I'm so glad you guys joined me. This is fantastic. This could be, I don't know, man. If you guys hit enough share buttons, and I would like for somebody to put in the comments their favorite wrestler growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right now, just go ahead and drop that in there, your favorite wrestler. And then, no pressure, but your favorite preacher of the three. Because we all three preached a little bit up here today. So no, I'm kidding. Don't do that. Hey, let me pray over you guys and pray over those that are listening and watching. Father, we just thank you for all of those that have joined us on the Cultivated Life Podcast. And Father, we just pray that you would bless, Lord, every person. And we just ask you to speak something into their life. Lord, we thank you for Dan. We thank you for Gary, their families. Lord, just so many amazing things are happening in their family right now. We just thank you for that. And we just give you all the praise and the glory and the honor in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you guys. Thank you for joining us. Click the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Tell us what you're thinking right now. We love you. We look forward to seeing you again real soon.